So in the continuation of our work through the deck, these cards were placed automatically. They're sequential. And Hangman was the next one, so it's associated with the call. Death is associated with the trial. Temperance is associated with the return, and the Devil with the Bardo. Again, this is not randomly chosen. This was just put down in the order that we're going through it. You could easily get these cards for different stages, presumably. There's a prior talk about the Hangman and associating it with decrease, hexagram 41, which would add to your understanding of this reading. But in this case, we got 28. Then for death, we got, in the trial, we got 35. And then for temperance, we got 53. And the devil, we got 41. Is what's blocking or cultivating compassion for loss, disappointment, and regret. As you will remember from the prior talk, we have an aversion in our society for loss, disappointment, regret. We try to figure out how to remove it, how to prevent it, how to distract ourselves from it. And so the idea is compassion, being with pain. Can we be with the pain instead of trying to solve it with some rags to riches story, some story of redemption, some kind of success, making our dreams come true, figuring out what our passions are and going for it. These are all the standard approaches in our modern society, and also what we see in religion and spiritual circles too. But we're looking to not do that. We're looking to just be with it, which is very difficult because we have cultural and physiological avoidance of loss, disappointment, and regret. So hexagram 28 means great exceeding, great surpassing, critical mass, and moving across the great pass. So the great pass to me means the Bardo itself. So when you're hanging upside down, and we talked about this in the other talk about shamanism, but what one is attempting to do is to enlighten, to get insights, to move beyond the mundane, understanding by inverting ourselves and seeing things as we would with hexagram 11. So we made it across the great pass. We're having exceeding and surpassing and the critical mass. So if this is personal to me, then I'm delighted because I would like to move into this automatic response of compassion for loss, disappointment, and regret instead of, as everyone else that I've ever met, moving to distract or solve or prevent. Okay, so that was a good sign. And then 35, another good sign if it's about me. We can't know that because I selected these numbers. These numbers were chosen based on the knowledge it was going to be in a video. So it could be general, I don't know. It could be humanity. Prospering, progress, the gift. And the story is about a prince or some royal figure who gives someone horses and he lets them, the males and females, get together 3 times a day and they multiply. So, in the trial, when we see death, we can be very concerned, obviously, because we're afraid of death. And the trial is often negative adaptive child versus negative free child. I would say that death is probably what fuels them, right? The negative adaptive child is like, if you don't obey, if you don't adapt, if you don't conform, then you will die. And the free child is like, I have to prove I'm strong so that I might prevent dying or die with some dignity instead of being a slave. So we let yin and yang, we let negative adaptive child and negative free child. I'm not saying that either of them are yin. They're both kind of yang, or you can say negative adaptive child is broken yin. But in any case, it's an idea of allowing that mixture to happen in the context of death flying its flag and being greeted by various strategies. Background, you'll see 2 towers, which we're going to get to later. Anyway, so now moving on to the return, temperance. As we've said before, this is not the return of the shaman to the tribe with the wisdom. This is our return to the Bardo. This is where we're typically attempting to send a message over the gap. Negative adaptive child sending a criticism of the negative free child or a warning to adapt and obey. Negative free child is sending over the gap a criticism of negative adaptive child or a warning to rebel, disobey, escape, fight, flight. or it could be negative controlling parent, negative or nurturing parent. It could be even positive things, but it's all not temperance. With temperance, we are just letting ourselves to send nothing into the Bardo. Just surrender to it, allow it to dissolve. No attachment to what happens. No claims for what should happen. And you can go to earlier talks about that. It's a Taoist principle. In hexagram 53, we have infiltrating, gradual development, and advancement. And so hopefully that's a good sign for me personally. And then 41, which is ironic or coincidental or chance, we don't know, was the hexagram we were talking about earlier today with respect to the hangman and the idea of loss. It wasn't actually that we were linking 41 to the hangman, but that we were looking at these two principles side by side. But in any case, here it comes, right out of the ether. And this hexagram relates to diminishing, loss, reduction, removal, damage, and decrease. And I talk a lot about that in an earlier talk. But obviously we can look at the devil as that kind of reduction or removing. And sometimes yin is associated with loss, destruction, decay. And yang is associated with life and creation. And I think that gives yin a bad name, so to speak. But nevertheless, decay is how things are recycled. And so we could look at the devil card in that context of this is where there's no boundaries, no direction, and it can feel like a threat to the ego, a punishment. And then when we come out of it for the second cycle from Bardo back to the call, we may not be eager to hang ourselves upside down and have insights because we may be afraid that we've been rejected, tossed out of Eden, tossed out of heaven, tossed out of non-duality, tossed out of the formless, ineffable, to be a form that is encountering loss, disappointment, and regret. And so I think this reading is fascinating.
We've been talking about these two polarities, and we've been talking about humility and arrogance. We've been talking about the polarity of doing something that you love or being with someone you love and not that. So if you look at the trial and the Bardo along the vertical axis, consider that the trial with this particular card, this death, is this pure yang. There's no yin in the noon, in the summer, in the day. So there's more likelihood of pure arrogance, no humility, no receptivity, all expression. Me, 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 here's what I think, here's what I want. And, the normal association is that's all bad, and we're not saying that it is, we're just saying that's what's happening at that end of the polarity. And then if you go to the bottom of the vertical line, is pure yin, night, not day. Not summer but winter, not expression but receptivity. And we might say that that's pure humility. It's so humble that there's not even a person that is there being humble. It's so receptive. But in order to have this world, we need to have some mixtures. So we go to the horizontal line. And at the call, you have the yang energy pushing into the yin energy, right? Just lifting it up. That's spring. That's dawn. And the card that we happen to have positioned there is the hanging man. And as I've mentioned, that shamanic practice of hanging yourself upside down, I believe may be initiated by a desire to create community or status through having insights, information, something to share, something to pass on. This relates to DNA, it relates to cultural ideas and academic, intellectual ideas, even spiritual ideas. And so there you have a mixing of the humility and arrogance. And the same thing is happening in reverse on the right side of the horizontal line, where we have the card temperance. Again, trying to find this balance between the yin and yang, between the expressive and the receptive. But in this case, yin is pushing its way into the yang. And so, in this case, the expression, the intensity, the desire to have things go my way, to have meaning, to have purpose, to have joy, to express is being infused with the opposite, receptivity, acceptance of how things are. You even can call it passivity if you want, but that's what's happening in the autumn, the dusk, fall, the return. And I've mentioned several times that I believe what is happening at the return is we're attempting to pass something forward across the gap so that it will inspire the next spring. You can call this saving the seeds, you can call it perseverating a thought, you can call it repeating something over and over again to keep it, you can call it writing it down, you can call it passing it on to generations, you can call it cement versus cob house, right? It's the desire to leave an inheritance, leave a mark, leave a legacy. This is what humans and systems face at the end of a cycle. But if we are willing to decay, if we have temperance, if we're willing to let go, then we will not be chained to the devil card. We won't be chained to some kind of attachment. We won't be fearing the Bardo dissolving us. We won't see it as hell or purgatory or endless time in a bad way, right? We're resisting eternity and resisting finality in the fall if we want to hold on to something. But with temperance, we say, there's some value in that, obviously leaving money to your children, for example, or planting seeds for the next spring. But there's also some value in letting go, in not needing things to be preserved. Turning to an earlier talk where we plotted these 4 sequential tarot cards with call, trial, return, Bardo, and 2 hexagram numbers. And what's interesting is that if you look on the vertical axis, on the top you have the trial, and there's progress, but death, which isn't considered to be progress. And then on the bottom, the devil, which was decrease, which we definitely do associate with decline. And so you can look at this vertical axis as a movement from the trial, from life with its challenges and strategies to try to get love and safety, as being a turmoil, a struggle between life and death. Death approaching on the horse, superior, unstoppable, and the victims below. And then to our darkest fears about what death means, where we are stuck in infinity, infinite life, that's why we get bored, right? Or with non-existence, which is also why we fear endings and loss. And then on the horizontal, it's fascinating because you look at the hanged man, which is we'll just say the victim to gravity, or being pulled by gravity. Now, if we're standing upright, then our feet are on the ground and the sky is above, which is hexagram 12. That's how we see the world. That's why we see instructions everywhere we go. As Buddha said, life is suffering. We have attachment and we have desire, things we want, don't want, criticizing our image and then praising our image. And so we're called into that, right? We're called into that. And the hanged man is saying, well, I'm going to be upside down, access the hexagram 11, access a view where the earth is on top and the sky is where my feet are. The sky is below. Trying to change my frame of reference which is hard for us because we're born into thinking down is where Earth is, down is where gravity is. But that's not necessarily the case, it's just where we're being pulled. So, but then you're talking about a downward pull towards the planet, but then on the other side of the horizontal axis, at the return, the figure has wings to take flight, to move upward. But instead of using that ability to escape the Bardo or to be superior in some way, it's practicing temperance. It's practicing the flow. And so that is sort of the opportunity, I would say the return is the opportunity to bridge space-time with the timeless infinite, to bridge the form and the formlessness, to bridge what's concrete and known to what's not concrete and what's unknown, what's paradoxical. So temperance is our way into that, and the hangman is where we're coming out of that. But the hangman, of course, is trying to go back to that. The hangman is trying to see things from the higher perspective of higher consciousness. And so this is a fascinating configuration.